Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody. Welcome to episode 155 of the Extra Mile podcast. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. I'm so glad you're with us today. And as this episode is releasing, we're at about a week until the bar exam in July 2017. So if you're taking the test next week, good luck to you. We hope your results are great. Stay tuned to future episodes of this podcast. We'll be sharing information from around the country about what was tested, what went on during the exams, and news and information. So, keep your podcast dial set right here. Is there such a thing as a podcast dial? Probably not. Anyway, speaking of how to get this information from us, you have a number of different choices. You might be listening today through Apple iTunes or iHeartRadio. You can also go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com/155 for the video version of today's episode. We invite you to do that. Or you can also check out all of our past episodes by looking at our website. There's a tab at the top of the page for podcasts. Check out that link. It'll have every episode along with all the show notes. So no matter how you want to consume your information about the Extra Mile and the bar exam, we've got it set up for you. Now, talking about new things and consuming new information, we've got a great free webinar available for those of you taking the exam in 2018 or later. The title of the webinar is How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. It's the new and powerful way to study for your bar and to pass. And I really want to share this information with you. It's completely free, and we're going to be offering this seminar this Thursday, July 20th, 3 p.m. Eastern, that's 12 noon Pacific. Now, you do need to register, and you can do that in one of a couple of different ways. You can go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com. You'll see a button right at the top of the page. Just click there, and we'll get you all set up. If that time doesn't work for you, or you can't wait till Thursday, just scroll down the page just a little bit further and you'll see an on-demand version of the same material. So either way, you can do that. Also, if you happen to be watching today's episode on video, just scroll down this page. There's a button there and you can click and link into the webinar that way. But no matter what, I really hope you'll join me. This is life-changing information that I think can give you a leg up on how to study and make the next bar your last bar exam. Now, in today's episode, we've got a couple things that we want to do. I want to begin by talking a little bit about a big change, or potentially big change in California with respect to the bar exam. And then the main message today, if you will, is a message that I shared with my students this week about how to write successful bar exam essays. Now, this is not new information for our students. It's what we've been teaching all along. But for many of you, it might be something a little bit different. And to prepare for this, I actually used a pretty trusted source. The little book, it's called The Elements of Style by Strunk and White. So you might want to go grab your copy. I know you've all got one somewhere in your home or your office or on your bookshelf. We're going to be using The Elements of Style to talk about successful bar exam writing in just a few minutes. But before we jump to that, I wanted to just bring you this sort of late-breaking news that we've gotten just before we went to record today. Those of you that are taking the Cal Bar may be aware, certainly are aware, that California has the highest cut score. That's the score that tells us, in essence, what it takes to pass the exam. And that's a big number to hit. And on this test, that number for the multi-state has been 144 or 1440. And the 1440 is the overall number that you need to pass the exam. Well, as you may also be aware, the pass rate in California is exceedingly low. It's one of the lowest in the nation, and it's been dropping pretty rapidly over the last 4 or 5 years. Well, in a decision that just came out from the California Supreme Court and announced just a few days ago, the court has decided that they will now take the responsibility to determine what the cut number should be, or in other words, what the passing threshold will be, and they've indicated that the changes will take effect in January. Now, this is significant because there's a lot of speculation out there that a change, no matter what it might be applied retroactively. Well, nothing's impossible, but I would tell those of you taking the exam in July 2017 to not expect it. Though it is possible that there'll be a change, you shouldn't go in thinking to yourself, well, maybe if I get a 1400 or a 1360, that'll be enough. There's absolutely no way to know that, and I would bet against a retroactive change. However, this may be a change that will affect February 2018. So if you've been thinking about, should I take the exam in 2018? I think the answer is yeah, you probably should. So here's what's really happening at this point. The cut score certainly lends the perception that California is the most difficult bar exam in the country. I certainly think it's one of the most difficult, having taught it for now over 20 years. The reason it's difficult in large part is this high passing score that's required. It's about 12 points higher than most jurisdictions would put in. To put it into comparison, if California used the New York score of 133 on the multi-state, or a 266 combined, it would be dramatically different than where we are right now with a 144. So that 12-point difference could be a huge change for people who are taking the bar exam. Don't forget that beginning with next week's exam, California's gone to a 2-day test, and the percentage that's allocated to the final score from the multi-state has gone up from 35% to 50%. So I think this is a change that could make a difference as much as the cut score change would make a difference down the road. Now, what's going to happen in terms of the California Supreme Court is that they will look at the bar results coming out of July 2017. And they will also look at a report. They've asked the bar examiners to give them a report about what those results are and what they mean. We expected before all of this that pass results might go up because we're going to a 2-day test and because of this switch between multi-state percentages going up. So I would expect a higher pass rate than we had last February. But what's essentially going to occur is that the justices could make a decision, they say, in September. And while they might be, as I say, talking about retroactively making a change to the score, I really don't expect that to happen. I know that there are some people that are out there wishfully thinking that it will occur, and we'll see. But again, I don't think that's very likely. I think what we're going to see here is that the bar examiners are going to be under more pressure to grade fairly. One of the things that's happened is that the Supreme Court said it's going to begin appointing a majority of the 19-member Bar Examiners Committee. Now, this committee has historically included non-lawyers and political appointees. And I don't want to point fingers. I'm simply going to say that this is an unusual collection of people that run the Cal Bar. And one of the unusual things they've done is that they've hired basically people looking for a side hustle to grade the Cal Bar essays. I suspect that one of the things that may happen is that we may see a slightly higher grading curve on essays from the July exam. That's my hope. I think the examiners would prefer that the California State Supreme Court not interfere in what they're doing, not go back and retroactively change the results. And so I suspect if there's any ability to adjust or move scores, it'll be in the grading of essays and performance tests. And I think it might be slightly higher because I don't think the examiners really want the court to be involved and to get out, as we would say in New Orleans, get up in their business. So we'll see what happens. It's an interesting story to watch. We'll keep you informed on it. We've been following this story since the beginning. We're not really engaged in the process of speculation about what it means. We're still telling our students to go forward, take the test as though it's 1440, to do all the things they need to do. And one of the things we're telling them is you got to write good essays. You got to write good performance tests. But what does that mean? And for some of you who are not in our course, you might be really struggling with that question today. So I wanted to spend the rest of today's episode talking about that very problem. So let's jump into a message I recorded with my students just recently about good writing on the bar exam using the elements of style. We are now 10 days or so to the test. And one of the criticisms that I sometimes hear from people in the course and people outside the course even is they say, you got all those inspirational messages, Mummy, that you post on YouTube and put in other places. But, when are you going to talk about some concrete tips? Well, a couple weeks ago, I did habit and consistency. That was pretty concrete. But I know that the people want more than that sometimes. And there's plenty of that, obviously, within our course for those of you who are studying and working. But I thought that today, with 10 days to go, I turn to what I think of as some of the masters when it comes to writing. Two of my very favorites and great authors. And the truth is, you probably have this book somewhere in your library. This book is called The Elements of Style, right? The little thin book. It's a narrow book. Now, those two authors were Strunk and White. Don't you love that? Strunk and White. Now, I happen to have a very special edition of this book. It's an illustrated edition, and it's great. I mean, it is so great that somebody would come up with illustrations on grammar. It's like, it's fabulous. In any event, this book you probably got somewhere in high school or college, and it's probably somewhere in your house or in your bookshelf, as I say. The book is in, I don't know how many printings it's been in. It is one of the classics in American education. It's absolutely wonderful. Most of you probably heard of Strunk and White, probably somewhere, as I say, in middle school or high school, maybe even in college. In English classes, you most likely had to refer to this book, and it probably drove you crazy if you did, because it was so simple and so straightforward. But it really has struck me, and it definitely this week, in going back and looking at it, as one of the few books, actual hard copy books that I keep on my shelf, because I photo read, so actually everything's on my digital, but this is one that I keep in hard copy with its illustrations because I like the pictures a lot too. Because, what other book would have an egg beater in it? Anyway, the great part about it is that I went back through to look at some of the basic guidelines to see if they would apply to writing good bar exam essays and performance tests, regardless of what jurisdiction that you're in. And I was stunned at how much application there was from the rules to what we teach and what we think good writing looks like. So what I wanted to do for you today was to recite a few of those rules, along with some notes that I've made about how I think it might apply to the kind of writing that you're doing. Now, Professors Strunk and White, both deceased now, were classic masters of what we would describe as scarce and sparse language. They believed that the best writing was the most direct, and that informed a great deal of what they do, and I also think it informs good bar writing. Now, here are their elementary principles of composition, most of which I think apply. And if you've got your own copy of the Elements of Style, I will just tell you that here are the elementary principles. You see with the check marks and hash marks here. These are my favorites, the ones that I like so much. It's just a great book. I just love it, love it, love it. Okay, anyway. The first of the elementary principles of composition was to choose a suitable design and hold to it. Now, if you're in our course, you know that that's important because we've already given you a particular writing structure. And you've heard me say repeatedly, stay within that structure, within the question or the answer itself, and from answer to answer. In other words, don't vary. Don't do one thing in some situations and then write differently in other situations. There are those bar applicants who jump around and write different kinds of designs or different kinds of answers, and they get themselves in trouble. They treat one question as something called a racehorse, and they do one thing. And then they treat another as a memorandum, and they do something different. And then they treat a third essay as an expository piece of writing, and they do something different again. And each time they get themselves into trouble. The trick here is to choose a suitable design for your writing and then hold on to it within the writing itself and from answer to answer. Be consistent. In our course, we've been very careful to say to you, every piece of writing holds the same form. Do the same thing. The second principle of composition, I love this one, make the paragraph the unit of composition. Make the paragraph the unit of composition. Now, I know people that write bar essays where the unit of composition is several pages long, or the unit of composition is a phrase, a legal term of art, or the unit of composition is whatever pops into their brain at that magic moment at the bar exam. Now, I will admit to being a curmudgeon about many things, but paragraphs are very high on my list of things that I'm a curmudgeon about. It's a nice little tool. Paragraphs tell us, stop, go to the next idea, tell the reader what's going on, put in a concept, deal with it, go to the next one, and go to the next one. If you don't write in paragraphs, whether it's a performance test or an essay, I think you're showing a considerable lack of writing skill for this form. You don't look or sound like a lawyer. You sound like a text messenger or an intelligent assistant that's just spilling information out. Now, I have to admit that in 2017, 2018, you probably don't paragraph much when you're writing on Facebook or when you're using instant messaging or you're texting or you're sending emojis. I can hardly wait till we have the day when we can put emojis on bar answers. But here's the news flash. The bar examiners for the most part, don't do any of those things either. They don't know anything about that. In fact, they're probably the last people in the world to get on Facebook. And they certainly don't know what emojis are. And they certainly don't understand the concept of abbreviations and SMH and WTF and so on and so forth. I mean, it's just LOL to them, right? There's just no way to make that work. And if you're not using a paragraph as a form of composition, you're literally missing the way that this audience is communicating and wants you to communicate to them. The third principle of composition I want to point out, probably my favorite, is very simple. It says use active voice. Come on, what else do I have to say? Don't write in the passive voice. Don't write in the third party, I'm a brilliant academic voice, but use active voice. Tell us specifically what you want. Make arguments to show how you would reason through a problem. Don't talk about the problem in the third party abstract. An observer of the legal problem might conclude that the possibility of the reverter might occur when the third party, what? Just what? What do you want? What's the argument? Sam failed to complete the transaction. Oh, okay, thanks. See, the passive voice is the opposite of active voice, but most people think they sound smarter when they use passive voice. This is particularly true for those of you that are foreign trained attorneys. You are dying to use passive voice because, frankly, most of the Romance languages, that's what you do. But Americans, yeah, we're New Yorkers, right? Forget about it. Just go to the next idea. Tell me what you need and move on. Next, very similar composition principle. Put statements in a positive form. Make arguments. Don't argue in the negative. I am always surprised when people start an evidence essay, for example, by making the argument of the party who agrees with the ruling. Defendant will agree that this evidence should be admitted. Huh? I mean, that's a little hard to do, isn't it? Start with the party who's unhappy, the party who's going forward first, the plaintiff, the party objecting, the party making a motion, the party who's the plaintiff or the respondent or the petitioner, right? I mean, not the respondent, the petitioner. Tell us the party who's got to go first. What's their argument? And then put that statement in a positive form. In the same vein, use definite, specific, and concrete language. Oh, I love that. If you're going to write something down, here's what you write down. Definite, specific, and concrete. You want another name for that? You're struggling with that? Okay. Facts. F-A-C-T-S. Facts. Definite, specific, and concrete. Who knew, right? Use the facts. I think that's exactly what we're talking about here. When people start talking about abstract theories of law and they don't ground it in the facts, they're neither definite, specific, or concrete. So if you begin the essay with the facts, which is what we tell you to do, then you are in the definite, the specific, and the concrete. And you can build from that in a way that is particularly powerful. The next, oh, yeah, I love it. I love one more than the other. I can't even say. The next is omit needless words. I know some of you would say, hey, Jackson, follow your own advice here. There's so much written throat clearing that goes on in a bar essay. Stop with all that. I read an essay today from a student in California who began their essay with, Proposition 8 requires all relevant evidence in California to be admissible. And I said, is there a dispute about that? Well, no. Well, why did you write about it? Because someone in a bar review many years ago told me that we should always start with Proposition 8. Why? What's the point? It's needless. Oh, by the way, did you get through the whole essay? No, I ran out of time. Why? Because you were writing about stuff that didn't matter. Omit needless words, needless ideas, needless points. Just get to the point. Now, getting to the point doesn't mean that you write an issue statement and then the rule. It means frame the argument and then write about the argument. You don't need needless words. You don't need to say more. Those of you that have been in the writing style that we've been talking about know that we're talking about 1 or 2 sentences in the facts, 3 or 4 sentences in the law, and then 3 or 4 maybe for the application. So really concise writing. Next, Strunk and White say, avoid a succession of loose sentences. This is the unit of composition of the paragraph. It's the analog. I find way too many people who just put together sentences. They just put together these random sentences. Sometimes they issue spot that way. Sometimes they argument spot that way. Here's what they do. Here's a sentence. Oh, here's a sentence. Here's another sentence. Oh, look, here's another sentence. Do these sentences have any connection to one another? Apparently not. You see, this idea of loose sentences is really difficult for the reader to understand. The reader has no idea what you're doing, and you want to avoid it. I said to a student today, this is the being John Malkovich problem. You know, the reader can't get in your head. They don't know what you're doing with all these random loose sentences. So be explicit, be empathetic to the reader, and help the reader know exactly what you mean. When you just put together these loose, long sentences, and then you think to yourself, well, the reader will connect the dots. They'll figure out the connection because really I'm in a hurry. It's a bar essay and I'm under pressure. Here's the problem. None of that will happen. It just won't. And so you've got to help the reader. So get rid of the loose sentences. And the final elementary principle of composition that I want to highlight from Strunk and White is to express coordinate ideas in similar form. Express coordinate ideas in similar form. Now, this is a lot like choosing the suitable design that we talked about earlier. And I think what the professors meant by this idea of coordinate ideas is that if you have an approach to the problem, stay with that approach all the way through your answer. Don't vary or deviate from it. In our writing, that means the 3-paragraph structure that we detail and teach. But whatever the writing style you're using, even if you're watching this later and you're using what I think of as the very deficient IRAC writing style because your big box bar review told you to do it or your law school told you to do it, at least stay consistent to that. It's the inconsistency that drives the readers crazy because now the reader has to stop and try to figure out what your meaning is because your structure no longer helps them understand it. If you've got coordinated ideas and you express them in the same form as we teach you to do in our course, then you are far ahead in the game. You're going to do much better, and we call that good, solid writing. Well, you know, I know that there are some people out there in the world when this video gets out into the wild who are going to say, well, you know, for 5 weeks, I was a bar grader. I made $3.25 per essay. So I know you don't need to do any of those things. Oh, those people. I love it. And, you know, and they all live on Craigslist. I don't know. Anyway, those folks can knock themselves out. But here's what I would say. Good writing is still good writing. And good writing has always had those qualities to it. And anyone who tells you that they can wade through all of the craziness, all of the mistakes that are made in writing in 5 or 6 minutes of reading an essay, and they don't need any of those tools or techniques to be successful, is really indicating their own lack of understanding and their lack of academic structure. This is a specific writing skill. And I think most of the people that would tell you to do that would tell you you can ignore all that, just use IRAC and everything will be fine. I think that what they're doing is sending you down the wrong path. The best way to write a successful essay or a performance test is to provide good writing. Now, there are a couple of other rules that Strunk and White have that I think are appropriate for bar exams, and I just want to highlight those. They come from the approach to style part of the book. If you happen to have the book somewhere in your office or bookshelf, and it's a great section. It's just called the approach to style with a list of reminders, and there are 21 of them. I'm going to talk about 4. The authors say this. Number 14, avoid fancy words. Don't you love it? That's all they say, avoid fancy words. Pretty clear, isn't it? I'm always impressed when I see an answer that has lots of si infra, si supra, heretofore, thereafter, and all sorts of great language for those contract lawyers among you, because I know that really that's a contract lawyer in waiting who's going to dazzle the world with contracts in language that none of us will ever understand and rarely be excited about. Unfortunately, those contract lawyers in waiting may never make it past the bar exam to get that opportunity. When you avoid fancy words, all you're doing is being clear and communicating. You're being direct when you communicate. Instead of trying to find the fancy word, just get to the heart of the problem. Rule 16, be clear. Nothing else to say, be clear. Rule number 19, do not take shortcuts at the cost of clarity. Oh, this is a good one for bar examiners. Look, everybody knows you're under time conditions. And I know that means that you think everyone should understand that you're having a crisis, you're in a hurry. But those of you that think you're going to just put down some phrases at the end of your answer, some outline words, some terms of legal art, some buzzwords, let me tell you right now, it doesn't work. Shortcuts at the cost of clarity end up in confusion and obscurity. And the examiners, no matter what the jurisdiction is, simply can't respond in any meaningful way to that kind of writing. So you don't want to take a shortcut in your writing if it's going to hurt the clarity of the work you're doing. By the same token, don't abbreviate things. Don't abbreviate plaintiff as P or defendant as D or big bank as BB. Don't do it. Just spell it out. Write it out. Do not take shortcuts at the cost of clarity. That's simple. And then the final rule I want to capture for you is this. I love it. It's the very last rule they give. Prefer the standard to the offbeat. Some of you really enjoy your idiosyncrasies. I know that I'm one of them, but you like the sense of being unique. You're like the person at American Idol. I know that's an old style concept, but you remember the guy that came out in the chicken suit? I mean, it was interesting for the 30 seconds that we watched it on American Idol. Maybe the better analogy today would be on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, the guy that comes out with the ventriloquist doll or comes out writing the, what did he write in on? I mean, weird stuff, right? Whatever it does to get somebody's attention for 30 seconds. But the truth is those guys or gals never win the competition, do they? In the same way, those of you that choose to write your essays and performance tests in some bizarre, idiosyncratic, highly individualized, very egocentric approach, we have a name for you in our industry. It's called a repeater. And that's the thing you obviously want to avoid. Don't try and call attention to yourself by doing some weird thing. I mean, really, don't do that. Just use a standard approach. And I know some of you are saying, well, then I should IRAC because everybody does that. No, plenty of people do what we teach too. The point I'm trying to make is don't do something weird. Don't suddenly start throwing a lot of exclamation points around and putting flowery marks on your page. And I mean, don't use emojis, okay? I think there are better standardized approaches than others, obviously, but no matter what approach you're using, be standard, be consistent, be clear. Now, when you do all of these things, when you take the lessons of a book like this one from Strunk and White, The Elements of Style, and you put them in your writing, you can't go wrong. You know, I've been teaching writing for going on almost 3 decades now, and I don't think bad writing is ever good writing. In other words, I think good writing will always succeed, no matter what the style or the material is. Good writing is good writing, whether you're writing to the U.S. Supreme Court or you're writing to the bar examiners or you're writing a letter home. You never can go wrong with good writing. And I've never seen an essay come back from the bar examiners where the comment or the thought was, you know, this was too clear. This was too straightforward. This was too understandable. You know that as well. So as you think about how to prepare in the upcoming days, keep that in mind. Study clearly, study in a straightforward way, be direct. And I think you'll find that the Elements of Style could be a very good friend to you as you get ready for your bar exam. Well, that's our message for today. I hope you found it helpful. And if you want to know more about how to do this kind of writing, I hope you'll check out our course at celebrationbarreview.com. Now, again, I want to just remind everybody you can join us this Thursday, July 20th, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, for our live webinar, How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. Just go to our website, click on the link there to register, or if you're on the video version of today's episode, scroll down this page and you'll see the link there. For those of you taking the exam next week, good luck to you, safe travels. Hope it's a great week for everybody, and we'll be back next week. Look forward to seeing all of you on the pass list soon. Thanks. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.